point is I built this practice of very complicated people. I mean, some of these people would come to me with 2 medical files 2 inches thick, and it would take me a week to read all the studies, all the blood samples, all the x-rays, scanogram, you name it, MRIs. I'd have to study a lot because they were very complicated people. So after a few years of this and having these complicated people, I started saying, Jesus Murphy, this person's got this chronic back pain. They've seen 50 chiropractors, they've seen neurologists. So I started saying, what's missing? What's missing? And so then I would start studying, like I said, what influences the low back. So you find, for example, when a woman's premenstrual and the uterus is inflamed, they commonly have back pain, and their legs get weak and their core stability goes down because the uterus reflexes through the entire sciatic distribution all the way to the toes, right to the belly button. It affects the suboccipital region, and women oftentimes have a hard time keeping their atlas in position when they're premenstrual because of the effects of estrogen, and the atlas is the most unstable vertebra in the body. So if your structure's not well aligned, it pops out and it pinches the spinal cord and causes all sorts of problems. So what I would do is I would start saying, okay, well, this system connects to that. This woman's got menstrual dysregulation. What causes menstrual? Okay, diet and lifestyle factors, caffeine, some of the things we're talking about. So I started noticing that if somebody has a uterus problem, that you cannot rehab them from an ACL injury if their uterus is inflamed because they can't stabilize. If you got back problems, you can't do it because the organs have a reflex control of the muscles, and I learned this studying Byron Robinson MD's book, The Abdominal and Pelvic Brain, that I just showed you, the first edition 1899, second edition 1907. I studied a lot of old medical books because back then those doctors were actually doing research to help people, not to make money. There's a big difference. You understand that? They weren't being paid by people to prove that some drug or some machine or some gadget worked. So they were doing honest research. So a lot of the older medical books are loaded with fantastic stuff. So then I came to the conclusion, okay, I need to look into organs. And what I found studying Byron Robinson MD's work is that the autonomic nervous system is designed so that whenever there's inflammation or stress in an organ, it will down-regulate the flow of blood to any muscle on the same nerve channel, because organs borrow their sensory neurons from the musculoskeletal system, which is why when a person's having a heart attack, they feel the pain in their chest and the left arm. No one says, my heart hurts. They have terrible pain in their chest and their left arm. The uterus borrows its sensory nerve endings from the lower segments of the sympathetic chain system, which feed the legs, for example, and the lower abdomen and the back. So what Robinson showed way back then is that if there's ever a competition between muscles and organs for blood supply, nutrients, and waste removal, the autonomic system will starve out the muscles to make sure that the organs and glands have maximum opportunity to heal. So I learned, as an example, you cannot effectively rehabilitate any musculoskeletal problem without a complete analysis of the gland and organ functions, because they control the musculoskeletal system. And then when you think about it, watch this. When you are hungry and your stomach's empty, what does it make your arms and legs want to do?
Grab food.
Go hunting, this would be the answer. You've got to go catch it, right?
Yeah, Whole Foods, usually.
Yeah. But our nervous system was wired, developed, right? So
usually crawling.
Without a long, drawn-out explanation, but you can actually look and you will see that there are emotional functions and psychological functions connected to each of your major organs that drive the musculoskeletal system to feed those needs, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I immediately realized at that point, after studying lots of research that backed this up, and even people would say, well, where'd you learn all that? I said, well, how about Netter's anatomy? I can show you right in Netter's anatomy. I can show you the exact anatomy, proving exactly what I'm talking right in a standard anatomy text. But it was amazing to me, all these people just completely overlooked it and pretend it wasn't even there. I'm like, what they teach you in school? I would look through this anatomy book and asking one question: how do the organs relate to the muscles? And I found it in 28 minutes. So what happened was, as I said, okay, I know now that I have got to look in every medical case for any indication of hormonal imbalance, which is glands, things like inability to produce hydrochloric acid, which causes all sorts of problems with the stomach and parasite infections and fungal infections, ... I've got to, and whatever I found, whenever I had someone with chronic musculoskeletal problems, 98% of the time I found gland and organ dysfunctions connected to it, and they couldn't heal because they didn't have a good enough diet, they didn't have the right nutrition, they didn't have enough sleep or rest, they were either over-exercising or under-exercising. Do you see what I'm showing you? I could show why that person wasn't healing, and when I corrected the things to allow the organs to have the nutrients and the rest they needed, all of a sudden, spine started to stabilize, pain started to go away, trigger points would clear up magically. So one thing led to another, and I said, okay, well, what would control organs then? So if you look at the map, well, what controls organs is the upper cervical spine. Why? Because the spinal cord goes right through the atlas. Every single nerve in your body passes through the foramen magnum into the spinal cord through the atlas, and the atlas, by the way, turns out to be, there's only two places where you have significant ligamentous connections from the spinal cord to the spinal vertebra. The denticulate ligaments attach to the atlas and sometimes to C2, and the filum terminale, the tail of the nervous system, connects to the coccyx. So if you have an atlas problem, and then I did tons of research and read piles and piles of studies by the National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association. I literally read every one of their scientific their journals, monographs, since they started writing them, hundreds of them, like since 1980 something, and found piles of evidence. Then I studied the medical literature, then I studied anatomy, and lo and behold, I found a mountain of evidence showing if the atlas is out of place more than 3/4 of 1 degree, the denticulate ligaments will put torque through the dura and will disrupt the axonal connections, and the synaptic gaps either get stretched too much, which inhibits neural activity, or they get compressed, and slight compression causes neural excitation. So all of a sudden I was finding that people, for example, that had chronic constipation would get their atlas corrected and then instantly start pooping.
Right.
I've seen many cases of women that had not had a period for 6 months, a year, 2-3 years, get their atlas correction, and within 10 minutes would start menstruating because the spinal cord was being compressed or put under traction. So then I said, okay, what happens if the sacrum's out of place? Well, it puts adverse mechanical tension on the spinal cord and can do the same damn thing. So what I'm showing you here is I found, okay, well, if the atlas is out of place, it will override those organs because it'll disrupt the communication between the brain and the organ, and the system cannot regulate itself. It can't compensate effectively. So if you take the same scenario I was just talking about, say the uterus being a problem, but the person comes to you with chronic low back pain that won't go away, and then you try to do all the things you need to do to help the uterus heal, and it's not working. If there's an atlas subluxation, it could be stopping the body from responding, because even though the body has the resources, the brain cannot regulate the control mechanisms because the communication system is broken. It's out of balance. It's being torqued, right? So then I thought, okay, well, geez, we always have to clear that. So I studied upper cervical pathology. I took courses, advanced physical therapy courses. I made a deal with all the physical therapists that I worked with for 4 years because they kept wanting me to teach them